When you stand beneath the night sky, you're not just seeing stars. You're witnessing the ancient history of the universe unfolding in real time. Some of the starlight reaching your eyes began its journey before humanity planted its first fields, before the Nile Valley filled with life, before the Sahara last blossomed with lakes and grasslands. The universe is old, astonishingly old, and for many people that raises a challenge to faith. If the cosmos stretches across billions of years, where does creation fit? That question only exists if we think creation is about when. The Tanakh opens by showing us something else entirely. Creation is about how the world is structured. Genesis 1, 3 through 5, I'm going to do some paraphrasing of the RJPS style. It says, light is summoned into being and set apart from darkness. Day is distinguished from night. Time begins with evening and morning marking its rhythm. This is not the language of a stopwatch. It is the language of order. In a paraphrase of Genesis 1, 9 through 10, waters are gathered into one place so dry land can emerge. Separation, boundary, distinction. These are the first acts that give the world coherence. The Tanakh presents creation not as a countdown, but as a world shaped with intention, where chaos is restrained, where boundaries hold, where each element is placed according to its purpose. And when you look at the universe through the lens of science, something remarkable happens. It tells a similar story in a different tongue. Across billions of years, the cosmos behaves with unwavering consistency. Gravity never forgets how strong it is. Light never shifts its speed. Atoms don't randomly change their rules. Galaxies are built by forces that remain reliable from one edge of the universe all the way to the other. If the universe were born from lawless chaos, it shouldn't behave like this. It shouldn't act like a system that can be measured, predicted, studied, and understood. It shouldn't produce patterns that survive for billions of years, yet it does. In Jeremiah 31, 35 through 36, quick paraphrase of RJPS, the fixed patterns of the sun, moon, and stars are presented as enduring witnesses, signs of stability woven into creation itself. The older the universe is, the more striking this stability becomes. Billions of years of consistent cosmic behavior reveal not randomness, but architecture. Order is the groundwork upon which time unfolds. So instead of asking whether the age of the universe challenges faith, we might ask the deeper question. Why does a universe this old remain so faithful to its own structure? A world ruled by chance should fall apart. A world ruled by order remains coherent. Psalm 19, 2 through 5, quick paraphrase. The heavens wordlessly reveal knowledge. Their movements proclaim meaning without speech, without sound, yet their message reaches everywhere. Science describes how these patterns work. The Tanakh tells us the patterns matter. Both point to a universe where order is not the exception, it is the foundation. This is where our journey begins, not with conflict between scripture and science, but with the recognition that the world is ancient, structured, intelligible, and filled with rhythms that reflect purpose rather than accident. So I want to explore why structure, not age, is the real heart of creation, and how the universe behaves less like an accident and more like a story set in motion with intention. When you watch the seasons change, it feels natural. Spring warms, summer stretches out, autumn cools, winter settles in. We all have our favorite seasons, and we all have our reasons why we love those seasons. And if you live in an area where there's not many seasons at all, you can still see the patterns exist all over Earth. But the seasons we experience are just the quick, shallow ripples of a far deeper movement, a set of slow, ancient rhythms built into the Earth itself. These rhythms are not random, they're not chaotic. They move with a precision that has held steady for millions of years. And once you recognize them, you begin to see that the planet, like the heavens, carries its own testimony of order. Genesis 1:14. Lights are set in the sky to mark the appointed times, the days and the seasons, measuring the rhythms of life on earth. The ancient text speaks of appointed times. Science shows us the mechanisms that create them. Let's begin with the first and smallest rhythm, the wobble. Earth spins like a top, but like any spinning top, it slowly traces a circle in the sky. This movement is gentle and slow, taking about 20,000 years to complete. But this wobble, known to scientists as precession, though we don't get lost in terminology, changes something crucial. It shifts where the sunlight falls. Not the amount of sunlight Earth receives, but the timing and intensity in each hemisphere. And when that sunlight shifts northward during the summer months, something extraordinary happens. Africa's monsoon rains strengthen, clouds drift farther north, a desert begins to bloom, the Sahara awakens. Quick paraphrase of Psalm 104:13. From above, the earth is satisfied by the flow of water, life renewed where rain is given. That single rhythm can turn a wasteland into a garden. Then we move to the second great rhythm, the tilt. Earth doesn't stand upright, it leans. And over about 40,000 years, that lean gently increases and decreases. A greater tilt means stronger seasons, hotter summers, colder winters. A smaller tilt makes the seasons milder. This tilt is one of the great triggers of ice ages. When the tilt sharpens, ice retreats. When the tilt softens, ice advances. The planet breathes with this motion. Finally, we reach the longest rhythm, the shape of Earth's orbit. Earth sometimes moves in a nearly circular path and sometimes in a stretched oval. That change unfolds over roughly 100,000 years. It alters how far Earth is from the sun in different seasons, nudging the climate in slow but profound ways. Ice ages, warm ages, rising seas, falling seas, shifting coastlines, changing winds. All of it is connected to this deep orbital sweep. And a paraphrase of Job 38:33, based on the RJPS, the laws of the heavens are fixed, their rule extends over the earth. What we call laws of nature are simply the physical expression of the very order the Tanakh speaks about: boundaries, times, cycles, structure. These three rhythms, the wobble, the tilt, and the orbit, aren't separate. They overlap like waves in the ocean. When they reinforce each other, dramatic changes sweep across the planet. When they cancel, the world quiets down. And through all of it, humanity has lived inside a world shaped by motions we never see but always feel. Ecclesiastes 1:4-7, RJPS paraphrase. Generations come and go, yet the earth endures. Winds turn back to their circuits. Waters run to where they come from. The cycles repeat as they always have. The ancient writer wasn't describing astrophysics, but he understood the truth behind it, that creation runs on patterns that do not break. And the precision of these patterns is what makes the next part of the story possible. The Sahara turning green, dying, and returning again like a continent breathing in slow motion. So next we're going to step directly into that rhythm. A rhythm so dramatic, so sweeping, that it reshaped continents, redirected humanity, and appears again and again in archaeology and memory. Once you see it, the ancient world begins to open itself like a book. This is where the Sahara comes to lack to life. Now, if you stood in the Sahara today, the sand stretching beyond the horizon, the heat rising in waves, it would be almost impossible to imagine that this land wasn't always like this. But the Sahara has a memory. Beneath those dunes lie the bones of fish that once swam across wide lakes. There are riverbeds carved into stone, rivers so large they rivaled the Mississippi. Hidden valleys contain ancient shorelines that mark the edges of inland seas, and carved into desert rock are paintings of elephants, hippos, cattle, and even boats. People lived here. People thrived here. A landscape that now scorches the earth once held life with abundance. And this transformation wasn't a one-time miracle. It happened over and over, each time following the rhythm we explored earlier. Genesis 2:6, quick RJPS paraphrase. A mist would rise from the earth, giving drink to the whole face of the land. The ancient writers knew that water shapes life. The Sahara story is the most dramatic example of this truth. Every time Earth's 20,000-year wobble shifts more summer sunlight into the northern hemisphere, Africa's monsoon surges northward. Clouds sweep across the desert, rain falls in torrents, the Sahara becomes green. Not partially green, entirely transformed. Vast grasslands spread where dunes now stand. Savannas stretch across thousands of miles. Rivers flow from mountain ranges long eroded. Lakes fill with life, some larger than modern Lake Erie. Now imagine standing in modern Libya and seeing a horizon lined with acacia trees. Imagine crocodiles sliding through channels in Algeria. Imagine giraffes walking across what is now a dead plain. That world existed. And it existed not because of human intervention, but because of Earth's deep, steady rhythm. Now, a quick paraphrase of Psalm 104, 10 through 12, RJPS. Springs gush between the hills. They give drink to all who dwell there. Birds settle near their waters, lifting their voices among the branches. This is what the Sahara looked like during those wet phases. It was not barren, it was alive. People built settlements along lake shores. They herded cattle, they fished, they carved their stories into the rock, leaving behind a record of world our eyes can barely imagine. And then, just as predictably as it arrived, the rain retreated. The wobble shifted again. The monsoon weakened, grasslands shriveled, lakes shrank to puddles, then vanished. Animals migrated or died. People began to move, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. In Isaiah 40 verse 7, RJPS quick paraphrase, grass withers, flowers fade when the breath of the world passes over them. The Sahara returned to desert. This cycle repeated itself for millions of years, not randomly, always in sync with the planet's celestial rhythm, a continent breathing in slow motion. And humanity lived through these transitions, generation after generation. Every shift reshaped where people lived, how they moved, and what stories they carried. And we're going to enter that human story. We're going to go into how the greening and drying of the Sahara triggered massive migrations, redirected the course of early civilization, and helped shape memories that echo through ancient texts. So this is when climate moves people, the human story inside Earth's rhythms. When the Sahara was green, people didn't merely pass through it. They built their lives around its lakes and rivers. They herded cattle. They hunted antelope, carved scenes of daily life, and raised families in a world that was open, fertile, and full of opportunity. But when the rains retreated, everything changed. The transformation wasn't gentle, it was steady. It was a collapse. A lake the size of a small city could shrink in a single lifetime. Grasslands that had fed communities for centuries withered within a few generations. Rivers that once carved broad valleys dwindled to dry channels. And as the land changed, people moved. They weren't wandering aimlessly. They were following water, the first and oldest human compass. And a quick paraphrase of Genesis 2, verses 10 through 14. This talks about water as the organizing center of human settlement. And it says, a river emerges and divides, becoming 4 headwaters, shaping the lands it flows through, giving direction, giving life. Water determines the path of humanity. Where water remains, people gather. Where water disappears, people leave. As the Sahara dried, its people flowed outward like the rivers that once sustained them. Some moved westward to the Atlantic coast. Others went south into the Sahel, joining communities along the Niger River. But the most influential migration moved east into the Nile Valley. At this time, the Nile was not yet the cradle of a civilization. It was simply a long, dependable ribbon of life cutting through a harsh landscape. But as the Sahara died behind them, the Nile became more than a river. It became a refuge. And a quick paraphrase of Isaiah 35, verses 6 through 7. Streams break forth in the wilderness. Parched land turns to pools of water. For the people fleeing the drying Sahara, the Nile was exactly that, a sanctuary where water still had rhythm. Each year, the river rose and fell with a predictability that the collapsing landscape of the Sahara no longer offered. This gift of stability changed everything. People who once lived around shifting lakes now built villages along a river whose flood could be trusted. Season after season, the Nile delivered silt, moisture, fertility, the ingredients for agriculture. Food surpluses formed, communities grew, knowledge accumulated, trade networks expanded. The earliest roots of Egyptian civilization took hold not in isolation, but as a direct consequence of a massive climate migration driven by Earth's celestial rhythms. This is why the earliest Egyptian worldview became obsessed with order, cycles, stability, and cosmic harmony. Their entire civilization was shaped by the memory of instability, the memory of a land they once lived in, a land that bloomed and died according to the rhythms greater than themselves. And a quick paraphrase of Ecclesiastes 3:1. For every event there is a season, a time appointed for every purpose under heaven. People carried this reality into their stories, their symbols, their rituals. They lived through the end of a world and the birth of another. And these migrations did more than shape Egypt. They influenced movements into the Levant, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Mediterranean, carrying with them memories of disappearing waters, rising floods, drying rivers, and lands that changed shape in their lifetimes. These memories echo in ancient stories scattered across cultures, stories of great waters, changing heavens, lost lands, and divine boundaries shifting. And next, I want to explore how these massive migrations didn't only reshape geography, they laid the groundwork for the earliest civilizations and helped them form some of the largest and oldest cultural memories humanity preserved. What Earth's rhythms reveal about creation. When you step back from everything we've walked through, the Sahara's transformation, the migrations it triggered, the birth of early civilizations, and the slow turning of Earth's celestial gears, a pattern becomes unmistakable. The world is not chaotic. It is rhythmic. The planet does not drift. It moves with purpose. Human history doesn't unfold in random directions. It follows the openings and closings of Earth's long, ancient cycles. Ecclesiastes 3:1, quick paraphrase, for every event there is a season, a time appointed for every purpose under the heavens. And I like the repetition of this verse because that single line captures the entire heartbeat of this episode. Earth has appointed times, slow, predictable, repeating cycles that shape everything from rainfall to coastlines to the movement of entire peoples. The Tanakh speaks in the language of meaning and boundaries. Science reveals the physical mechanisms behind those boundaries. And when the two are allowed to speak in their own ways, they harmonize. Consider the Sahara again. It doesn't turn green by accident. It doesn't dry up by random. Its transformation follows the 20,000-year rhythm of Earth's wobble with stunning precision. Consider the ice ages. They don't come suddenly out of madness. They emerge when the tilt of the planet shifts downward, and they fade when the tilt rises again, exactly as predicted. Consider ancient migrations. People moved when water retreated. People settled when water stabilized. People built civilizations when rhythms allowed planning across generations. Now, a quick paraphrase of Jeremiah 5:22. The sea is set behind a decree. Its waves may surge, but they do not cross the boundary set for them. Creation has limits. Creation has patterns. Creation has laws. You can see them in the orbit of planets, the pulse of monsoons, the shape of river valleys, and the timing of deserts that come and go like slow turning pages in Earth's history. In all of this, every cycle, every shift, every migration tells the same truth, that the world was formed with structure, not static, not frozen, but structured. Quick paraphrase of Psalm 104, verses 24. How many are your works, all made with wisdom? The earth is filled what you have fashioned. Wisdom is not chaos. Wisdom is pattern expressed through time. The older the world is, the more clearly these patterns stand out. And the more deeply we understand these patterns, the more we recognize that 1. Creation is not randomness. 2. Creation is not disorder. And 3. Creation is not accident. Creation is rhythm. Rhythm embedded into the heavens and echoed on the earth. And humanity has always lived inside that rhythm. Our migrations follow it. Our civilizations rise in the spaces it opens. Our memories carry the imprint of the changes it brings. Our scriptures reflect the truth of boundaries, cycles, and appointed times. And in the next episode, we will turn from the rhythms themselves to the human memories of these rhythms, especially the major transition between 6,000 and 4,000 before the Common Era, when the Sahara dried, rivers vanished, and early peoples moved into the Nile Valley, the Levant, and beyond. It's a chapter of history that reshaped the ancient world, and one that quietly echoes in some of the earliest stories humanity preserved. The story of the planet's breath becomes the story of our beginnings.